The 14-day deadline for municipalities to convene their first councils is drawing nearer. The local government elections have come and gone, and now Hang municipalities must enter into coalitions to form governments. That's within 14 days of elections. Negotiations are underway between parties who want to align and form these coalitions. To discuss this in detail is political analyst Professor Susan Booysen. Good afternoon, Professor. Thank you very much for your time. Now, we're continuously monitoring these coalition talks, and we understand that the Western Cape's Cedarburg municipality is now the first to conclude coalition agreements. Now, looking at that municipality specifically, the ANC had the highest number of seats but found itself with no parties willing to enter into some sort of an agreement with it. And yes, it's just but one municipality, but could it be an indication of what awaits the ANC in several Hang municipalities across the country?
Now, it could certainly be a very important indication, because if we read the opposition party's statements to date, the interpretation they put to the overall result in this local government election is very much that, or equates that, of a referendum of the voters against the ANC, a rejection of the ANC. And the opposition parties are seemingly very aware of that, and they are reluctant to engage, to encounter a, can I say, pushback from their voters if they, in their own words, let the ANC back in through the back door. So irrespective that they themselves, in many of these cases, just didn't have the kind of proportion that the ANC had of the vote in the different localities, they do interpret it as, in a broad, almost a national sense, that this is a judgment of voters against the ANC, a rejection of the ANC. And perhaps this is also part of the political parties' game. Therefore, for the political parties, it's really two broad options, and that is to advance their own party political interests, strategic positions and strength that they gained vis-a-vis the ANC, often not in own percentages, but vis-a-vis the ANC, with the ANC falling below 50% now. That's on the one hand, their strategic position. On the other hand, getting together, perhaps making compromises and forming a type of local government of local unity in order just to get governance going. But there the opposition parties again get stuck, and they use a strong argument, and that they cannot go in coalition with the ANC, whereas in many cases corruption is in the former ANC governments at this local level is what they will be fighting against.
So what does it say, Professor? Sorry to interject there, Professor, but then what does it say of the political parties that are willing to enter into agreements with the ANC? Because just judging from last night's development with Action SA, they said that their conversation or negotiations with the EFF collapsed precisely because the EFF was willing to actually have some sort of an agreement that involves the ANC. So what does it say of the political parties that are willing to work with the ANC at this point? Is it perhaps them thinking that, you know what, we have a renewed ANC of sorts, it's an ANC led by Cyril Ramaphosa, and he's got a rigorous process that the ANC is undertaking to actually elect mayors at this point?
Yes, indeed. That's a very important point. And we see so many political parties not yet, or these opposition parties not yet, taking that position of supporting the anti-corruption initiatives of President Cyril Ramaphosa. And the EFF, that is the major small to medium-sized party that has come forward and seemingly being willing to work with the ANC, but not going on the fight of corruption against. The EFF has been seeing this as a major opportunity to get very broad, national level, really, political policy concessions from the ANC that they would not otherwise have been getting through parliamentary processes, and now want to use these coalitions in order to get that. And that's the way the EFF also brought the DA coalition governments, for example, in Johannesburg, to a fall previously. So it's interesting that political parties that are aligning with the ANC, especially the EFF, that's a notably sized one, is not coming in on that fight against corruption and the credentials of Cyril Ramaphosa in the process, but rather wanting to use this process to get those major policy concessions.
And then to the situation in Umgeni municipality from yesterday, where we saw the suspended municipal manager wanting to preside over the first council sitting. I know that that situation is unclear as it stands because she's saying her suspension in fact lapsed, but never mind all of that. I think it opens up a conversation around the difficulty that possibly awaits incoming administrations who will have to work with municipal officials who could very well still be loyal to their erstwhile political parties. What do you think of that? Could ordinary citizens not see themselves disadvantaged in this respect, where there could be talks of sabotaging each other, etc., with the administration and the officials?
It certainly is a case of huge possibilities of immediate, intensified instability and inabilities to cooperate in these councils. It's one of many types of conflicts that are manifesting. Another case, there's some contest around the fact that those municipalities that had been under administration continue to be under administration, at least until they can prove to COCTA and their provincial officials that they have the ability to run those municipalities. That's another one. And we've heard of many cases, or some cases at least, also from KwaZulu-Natal. I've heard specific reports of newly elected councillors immediately wanting to take over and occupy offices and take over processes. So there is a type of anarchy, institutionalized anarchy in the local governments processes and institutions as we see it now, and we can be very, very lucky if that is stabilized anytime soon.
We seem to have run out of time, but just in closing, Professor, to talk about the ANC. You know, right now we're seeing the ANC embarking on its mayoral interviews. We know that some regional chairs have been sidelined. The likes of Kgosi Mayepa and Tshwane didn't make the top 3. We know that particularly in Johannesburg, we have the regional secretary, Dada Morero, who is vying for the position along with the current mayor, Mpho Moiran. Now, in that situation, I just want you to talk of the wisdom of having these mayoral interviews at a time when other political parties are now sort of tying loose ends on their coalition agreements. Then you have an ANC that's still embarking on this process, which could give birth to factions because many people would rally around their preferred candidate. And then we're back to 5 years of people that will be squabbling if one person emerges as the preferred candidate to be mayor. What do you make of that? Is there wisdom in doing it now when other parties are talking coalitions already?
Yeah, I would say it is not. I would say definitely it's vastly preferable, would have been preferable if these mayoral candidates and mayors designate, should they gain the upper hand in the coalition negotiations, be there and be determined already. Because who is the mayor says a lot to both ANC and to opposition parties as to who will be taking the lead should they align with the ANC in those municipalities. So I think it's a huge source of additional potential instability, with many of these power struggles being reinvigorated, refreshed in the ANC, whereas otherwise there could have been much more stability at this stage and much more opportunities and prospects, better prospects in potential coalition formation.
So would you say then it probably opens up a conversation around managing succession, where perhaps you might see political parties imposing leaders and saying this is the mayor and that's it, for the sake of unity of the ANC? Because some accuse the president currently of being very blithe, that he's a very nice guy and pro-democracy, of course. Do you think they should have a situation where they're managing the leadership issues, because they're seeing a lot of factions?
You know, it could very well come to the point where it's necessary to do that. However, even just the fact that Cyril Ramaphosa and his band of leaders would be taking the lead into making determinations like that would immediately then also be discredited by the opposing faction, saying it's factional purging, it's factional favoritism, etc. So it is literally a type of stalemate there. Whatever decisions will be taken there, it's almost inevitable that there will be intra-ANC conflict and disputes entrenched.